Good morning.
Dr.
Good morning.
This call is now being recorded.
Okay.
Okay, so
Tisha,
yeah, okay, ma'am.
Tisha,
A very pleasant morning to our respected teachers and to each and everyone who has joined us today. I'm Tisha Rapela, the Vice President of Vanijya, the Commerce Society of our own Acharya Narendra Dev College. Welcome you all in today's webinar. I would request Principal Sir to please speak a few words about the webinar.
Anjay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tisha. A very warm good morning to all. And welcome, Sushma ma'am, to this webinar and agreeing for this. We are really very grateful. Namaskar, ma'am.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar. Anjay, thank you. Thank you for coming to this webinar. And once again, I congratulate Vanijya Society of Commerce Department for taking this initiative and inviting Sushma madam for this webinar. It's a great thing that Vanijay Society is doing during this pandemic time, and I am able to see that around 95 participants are there, which is really very good number. So I think Commerce Department is doing so well, and thank you, Dr. Shalu Mahajan, and all the faculty members of Commerce Department, and hope they will keep continuing organizing such type of webinars, which are going to from which we are going to learn a lot. And this time, Shushma Madam is talking about the contract law. So I think it is a very important topic for a common student, not only for the common students, but for the others also to know the nitty gritty of this law. So once again, congratulations and best wishes to the Commerce Department, Vanijaya Society. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for the encouraging words and your presence. So we'll start the webinar. Well, when I was in first year, I used to wonder that how to learn the entire Indian Contract Act 1872. I wish I could get an entire summary of that act, but how unlucky was I? Well, Vanijay has come with this golden opportunity for all the first year students out there to get a chance to learn to the author, listen to the author herself. Well, ma'am's accomplishments can't be described in just a few sentences. She is an associate professor in the Department of Commerce at Daulat Ram College, University of Delhi. She topped the BCom examination at Daulat Ram College in 1975 and is a Delhi University position holder. She has been the awardee of National Merit Scholarship during her MCom course from Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. She obtained her MPhil in Finance from Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. She has 40 years of teaching experience. She participated in a number of national and international seminars and conferences. She is the author of 9 books. She has contributed as the author of various e-lessons in National Mission on Education and Virtual Learning Program of Institute of Lifelong Learning Center. She is a life member of 2 professional bodies such as Institute of Commerce Association and Institute of Accounting Association, Delhi NCR chapter at Daulat Ram College, University of Delhi. She has also edited a book of proceedings of national conference titled Income Inequality, Protectionism and International Trade in Digital Age with reference to India, published by Excel India Publishers, New Delhi. She has organized a 3-day EFDP and ESDP during COVID-19 pandemic on the topic and entitled Simplifying Online Teaching Learning Process through ICT Tools at Daulat Ram College, University of Delhi. This was just a brief introduction of ma'am. She has conquered a lot in her life. So without waiting for a single second, let's start the webinar by welcoming ma'am. Sushma ma'am, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. You can take the floor now.
Yes, friends, very good morning to one and all present here. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Ravi Tuteja, the principal ANDC. And I'm also thankful to Dr. Shalu Mahajan, convener, and Dr. Jitender Goyal, co-convener of Vanijya Society. And I'm also thankful to the President Vanijya Society for introducing me to the participants. So friends, you all know as the topic for today's webinar is overview of Indian Contract Act 1872. So first of all, friends, mine will be the verbal presentation. So first of all, I'll give you the overview of ICA 1872 as per the syllabi, which was introduced from the year, with effect from 2019-20. You all know, friends, there's a new syllabus which was introduced with effect from, you know, uh, with effect from July 2019-20. And then, friends, frequently asked questions because many students on my WhatsApp have been contacting me. Okay, they have been asking questions, and as and when I get time, I have been addressing to their queries also. And so after I finish, if the college wants me to take up special contracts, that also I'll take it up. And then last of all, if students have any queries, they can they can ask the queries, which will be addressed by me. So friends, you all know this there are 5 units in the syllabi of BCom Honors. First is the IC 1872. Second one is the special contracts, which are also parts of ICA. Then third one is the Sale of Goods Act 1930. Fourth one is the LLP Act 2008. And the last is IT Act 2000. Friends, this ICA 1872 is the lengthiest one. It takes a lot of time because this is a new act for all of you. Business law paper, students never study at 11th or 12th standard. This is a new paper, new subject for all the students. And it is technical paper also because, in the very beginning, students find it difficult because it's technical paper. All law papers are technical papers. And but with the expiry of time, when they start listening the teacher, and teacher also converts the difficult paper into simple one. She also makes a paper simple one. So students start taking interest, and then they start liking the paper. So this is the general observation which I have found for the last so many years. I have been teaching this paper around 37 or 40 years. I have taught this paper. So friends, a lot of introduction has been given about me also. This Indian Contract Act 1872, friends, it was introduced with effect from 1st September 1872. Okay, it has got 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 comprises of, 75 sections. Section 1 to 75, which deal with the general principles of law of contract. And the second part, it comprises of sections 124 to 238, and this deal with the special contracts. There are 3 special contracts. First one is the contract of indemnity and guarantee. Second is contract of bailment and pledge, and the last is contract of agency. So friends, as you all know, this ICA 1872, it applies to the whole of India prior to August 2019. It used to apply to whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But then, the bill for J&K reorganization 2019, it was placed in the Rajya Sabha, which was passed also in the Rajya Sabha on 5th of August 2019. And it was passed in the Lok Sabha on 6th of August 2019. And President gave his assent on 9th of August 2019. And with effect from 31st October 2019, this act has become applicable to whole of India, including the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So friends, I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
So friends, there are 10 chapters, and then there are 3 chapters for special contracts, chapter 11, 12, and 13. And first 10 chapters, friends, they are regarding so first chapter is the introductory chapter, where, students study that what is a contract, nature of contract, kinds of contract, okay. And then, up to breach of contract are there, which have been covered under sections 1 to 75. And then, as I've told you, that there are special contracts also. 3 special contracts are there, which have been discussed under sections 124 to 238 of ICA 1872. So friends, the very first chapter, what is the meaning of the term contract? Contract has been defined by a number of authors, like Salmond, then William Anson, and it has also been defined as per Section 2H of 1872 Act. So, friends, what is a contract? Contract is an agreement which is enforceable at law. So, friends, when we analyze a definition, we find there are two terms. Every agreement is not a contract. Contract is equal to agreement plus enforceability. So the term agreement is wider as compared to the term contract, because every agreement is not a contract. Agreement may be giving rise to the social obligation, religious obligation, moral obligations, political obligations, but every agreement is not a contract. Now the question arises, every agreement is not a contract, and the agreement should also be enforceable at law. So the term contract is equal to the two terms. First is agreement and second is enforceability. Now what is agreement? Agreement is a sum total of two terms. One is offer and second is acceptance. So friends, every agreement is not enforceable at a court of law. Now the question arises, what is the meaning of the term enforceability? So friends, if A says to B, and A pays 50,000 rupees to B, and he says, you go and commit the murder of C person. And now B does not commit the murder of C in the saying of A person. Then in that case, friends, A cannot recover his money from B. Why? Because, murder is not permitted. It is an act which has been forbidden by law. Okay, so friends, here the agreement is not enforceable. Rather, the person who commits any act which is forbidden by the IPC, Indian Penal Code, that person is subject to punishment. So, friends, every agreement is not a contract. The term agreement is wider as compared to the term contract. And then, friends, all contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not contract. Now the question arises, which agreements can be termed as contract? There are 11 essentials which have been laid down under Section 10 of ICA 1872, and any agreement should have all those 11 essentials. Then only, friends, that agreement can be termed as contract. And those essentials are, friends, an intention to create legal obligation, offer and acceptance, then consensus ad item, competency of the parties to contract, pre-consent, and then legality of object and consideration, certainty, possibility of performance, and then after that, the second last point is agreement should not have been declared as void under the law, and the last is legal formalities. So friends, first 7 chapters of ICA 1872, they are pertaining to these essentials. There's a full chapter on offer and acceptance, then full chapter on competency of parties to contract, lawful consideration, one full chapter on free consent, legality of object and consideration, and then another chapter on void agreements. So first 7 chapters of ICA 1872, they deal with these essentials of a valid contract. So when 7 chapters are covered by the teacher, then students are in a better position to answer this question. All contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not contract. So if any agreement has all essentials, then only that agreement will be termed as contract. Then friends, another statement you must have been taught by the teachers, that law of contract is not the whole law of agreements, nor is it the whole law of obligations. Everything has not been covered under Indian Contract Act 1872. Okay, we are having the Partnership Act to deal with the partnership matters. You all have studied at your 11th or 12th standard. Partnership, minor partner, duration of partners, types of partners, dissolution of partnership, etc., etc. And then, friends, there is separate act for LLP, okay, which is also a part of syllabi of BCom honors course. And then there's a separate act for to deal with the bill of exchange, promissory note, and check, which is known as the Negotiable Instrument Act 1881. So the law of contract is not the whole law of agreements. All agreements have not been covered under the law of contract, and it is also not the whole law of obligations. We know, friends, that every agreement or every contract creates rights and obligations, but every obligation does not arise out of contract. Sometimes we do find, there is no contract, there is no agreement, but still the obligation is there. Many obligations do not have their source in contract, like torts. Torts is one of the cases where, tort means civil wrong. So tort is one of the cases, friends, where obligation is there despite there was no contract. Quasi contracts is another case. So the teacher must have taught you all these points. So there are certain obligations which will arise, which will have the same consequences as the contract has, but they do not have their source in contract. And then, friends, kinds of contract. There are various bases on which we can classify the contracts. Enforceability, valid contract, voidable, illegal, and unenforceable contract. And then on the basis of mode of creation, express, implied, quasi contracts, okay, and then e-contract, online contract, which is also known as digital contract. So, friends, all these concepts are there, and I hope you must have understood all these concepts from your teachers. And they are very, very important because in the subsequent chapters, time and again, the same concepts have been used. So, valid contract, any agreement which possesses all essentials which are given under section 10. Void, void means which is valid in the beginning, and due to some reasons, maybe change of law, destruction of subject matter, okay, or incapacity of the party, okay. So the valid contract has been transformed into void. And then void agreement, you all know, friends, any agreement which is not enforceable at law is known as void agreement. There's a definition which has been given under section 2G of ICA 1872. Then voidable contract. You all know, friends, voidable contract is one where consent is not free. Voidable contract as per section 2I is enforceable at the option of one or more of the parties, but not at the option of other or others. So basically, friends, we know that in case of voidable contract, consent is not free. When is the consent not free? When it is caused by coercion, undue influence, fraud, and misrepresentation. Even in case of unilateral mistake, we find sometime the consent is not free and the contract becomes voidable. So friends, there is a one full chapter on free consent where you all must have studied, what is coercion, what is undue influence, what is mistake, and what is, what is fraud and misrepresentation. Okay, so and then, friends, after this, so all these terms, express contract, implied contract, quasi contracts, and then, online contract. In online contract, you all know, friends, there's e-offer, there's e-acceptance. Okay, so once the acceptance is given, because at the click of mouse, we write, we get the terms and conditions. When we click on agree, it means, the terms and conditions are acceptable to us. So we have accepted the offer and the contract is created. So online contract is also known as digital contract. It is also known as high-tech contract. Express, where, offer and acceptance is, written or oral. Implied, it is neither oral nor written, but it is inferred from the conduct of the parties or from the, circumstances of the case. So friends, ATM is a very good example of this implied contract. And then after that, there's more examples, DTC buses plying on the routes, on metros operating at different routes. So all these are the examples of implied contract. Now, implied contract is the sum total of two terms. One is implied offer and second is implied acceptance. Okay, so and then friends, after that, you will find there are some distinctions. How is void agreement different from illegal agreement? How is void agreement different from voidable contract? Every void is not illegal, but every illegal is void. And why is the agreement illegal? There are 5 points which have been provided under section 23 of ICA 1872. Objective or consideration is illegal. It is fraudulent. It is against the provisions of law. If permitted, it would defeat the provisions of law. So you all know, friends, Hindu Marriage Act does not permit for polygamy and bigamy. Okay, or it implies or involves injury to the person or property of another. Causing loss to the property of another is not permitted. Committing assault on other is prohibited by IPC, or it has been regarded as immoral, or it is opposed to public policy. Prostitution, you all know, friends, it has been regarded as immoral. It is against good morals. And there are a number of agreements which have been regarded as opposed to public policy. There is chapter 6, which is legality of object and consideration. So you must have studied that which agreements have been regarded as opposed to public policy. So friends, in the very first chapter, just introductory chapter, meaning of contract, types of contract, nature of contract, okay, and distinctions, some distinctions. As I've told you, how is void agreement different from illegal agreement? Void is wider concept. Every void is not illegal, but every illegal is void. And friends, illegal means it has not been permitted by the law. So then the parties are subject to, criminal liability. And there's no criminal liability in case of void agreement, which is void only, but it is not illegal. And then, friends, there are distinctions, say, void agreement. How is the void agreement different from voidable contract? So many points of distinctions are there. So friends, when you write the answer for distinctions, you should always try to write in the tabular form. Because, everything is very clear that on basis of distinction, then, two terms, one is the void agreement, other is voidable contract. So then it gives a clear picture of the various points of distinction between the two terms. After this, friends, as I've told you in the beginning of my verbal presentation, that first 7 chapters under ICA 1872 are pertaining to the first few essentials. So there's one full chapter on second chapter on offer and acceptance. What is offer? What is acceptance? What constitutes valid offer? And what constitutes valid acceptance? No, offer is nothing but the willingness which is expressed by one before another with a view to obtain the assent of another. And this willingness is expressed regarding what? To do something or to abstain from doing something. So friends, then we say the person has made the proposal. And when this proposal is accepted by another person, and we say now the proposal has been accepted by another person. So who is the proposer, who is the acceptor person? You all know, friends, all terms must have been very well, cleared by your teachers. So friends, not only offer should be there, but offer should also be valid. What constitutes valid offer? There are 9 to 10 points are there, conditions which must be satisfied. And very important case laws are also there regarding this. English case laws as well as Indian case laws. Offer should always be communicated. Offer may be positive, negative, offer may be general, specific. Okay, offer may be to do something or to abstain from doing something. Now, the important case laws, friends, case law regarding general offer, Carbolic versus, Carlyle versus Carbolic Smoke Ball Company. Then offer should always be communicated. The case law regarding this, Lalman Shukla versus Gauri Dutt. Very important case laws regarding this offer. One is regarding JNL offer, which is Kalil versus Carbolic Smoke Ball Company. And then, the offer should always be communicated. Very important landmark case law, which is, Lalman Shukla versus Gauri Dutt. Of course, many more points are there, friends. That offer is different from an answer to your question. It is also different from invitation to an offer. Invitation to an offer, friends, when we talk about prospectus is the example of invitation to an offer. Because through prospectus, public is invited for the purchase of shares and debentures. So another example is when the goods are sold on auction basis. Even, that is the example of invitation to an offer. So there are many points of distinction between offer and invitation to an offer. And then, friends, what constitutes valid acceptance? The term acceptance has been defined under Section 2B of ICA 1872. The person to whom the offer is made, when he gives his assent thereto, offer is said to be accepted. Now, friends, here, our indication is towards specific offer. Because general offer can be accepted by anyone who comes forward. A specific offer can be accepted by the person to whom it is made. So like valid offer, there should also be valid acceptance. And there are many, conditions which must be satisfied for valid acceptance. Like communication of offer, acceptance should also be communicated. Very important case law you must have studied, friends, which is Powell versus Lee. Okay, so must be knowing the facts of this case law also. So acceptance may be of the general offer, acceptance can also be of the special offer. Offer should also be communicated. Silence cannot be regarded as a mode of acceptance. Mental acceptance is ineffectual. It is not at all effective. It is not at all valid. Yes, friends, I hope I am audible to all of you. Yes, am I audible to all of you? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, friends. Now, after that, friends, when is the communication of offer complete? And when is the communication of acceptance complete? And then, what is revocation? You all know the meaning of revocation means to take back, to withdraw. Now, when we talk about offer, communication of offer is complete when it comes to the knowledge of the offeree. And communication of acceptance has got two aspects. When is the communication of acceptance complete as against the offerer? And when is the communication of acceptance complete as against the offeree? So friends, the provisions have been contained under section 4, 5, and 6 of ICA 1872. And revocation, when we talk about, revocation has got two parties. The person who wants to revoke and the person to whom the revocation message is to be sent. So the revocation could be of either one, either offer or acceptance. So once the offer is made or it is accepted also, then it can also be revoked, friends. Say the offerer has decided to sell a second-hand motorbike for 30,000 rupees. It is a very old model. Okay, and then he has communicated his offer to the offeree. And then he changes his mind. No, he's not going to sell this. He's not going to get new one this time. He will wait for another 6 months. Then he sends the message containing the revocation of offer. Okay. Now, which reaches the offeree before he accepts. Then, friends, once the offer has been revoked, then the question of its acceptance does not arise. So friends, revocation means to take back or to withdraw. Once offer made, it can also be withdrawn. And once acceptance is given, now it can also be revoked by the offeree person. And this revocation message of acceptance reaches the offerer earlier than the acceptance. Then friends, there will not be any contact. You all know, friends, you all have studied communication of offer, communication of acceptance, communication of revocation. And what is the time limit within which offer or acceptance be revoked? You all know, friends, that offer can be revoked at any time before it is accepted by the acceptor. And acceptance can be revoked at any time before the acceptance reaches the offerer. Once it has reached the offerer, it means the agreement has been created. And once the agreement has been created, then neither offer nor acceptance be revoked. So all these headings you must have been taught by your teachers under the second chapter, which is offer and acceptance. And then, friends, comes, lawful conciliation. What is conciliation? Conciliation is a technical term which is used in the sense of quid pro quo, which means something in return. Or in the words of Pollock, it is a price for which the promise of other party is bought. And the promise which is given for value is enforceable. So, friends, consideration means something in return. And this something in return should also be lawful. It should also be legal. Otherwise, friends, that agreement will remain agreement only. It will never take the form of valid contract. And then, friends, there are certain rules regarding, legal rules regarding valid conciliation, which are clear from the definition itself. Conciliation term, you all know, you must have studied, it has been defined under section 2D. When at the desire of promisor or any other person has done or abstained from doing, does or abstains from doing, promises to do or abstain from doing something. Okay, this something in return or return promise is known as consideration for the promise. So, there are a number of rules which become evident from this definition itself. Like consideration may be past, present, or future. It must move at the desire of promisor. You must have studied the case law also, Durga Prasad versus Baldev. Then it may move from promisee or any other person, which is clear from the definition itself. The case law regarding this is Chinnaya versus Ramaya. Then, of course, consideration may be past or present. It need not be adequate. Law says, friends, that consideration must be there. But how much is the consideration? Law has not defined the quantum of consideration. So if, the person is in dire need of money, okay, he wants to sell his item, say, second-hand computer for 40,000 rupees, but its worth is 60,000. Then in that, and he's not getting the buyer. And he comes across with the buyer who is prepared to pay him 30,000 only. And since he needs money, he says, okay, I don't mind selling my computer at 30,000 rupees. Here also, friends, the agreement will be there. It will be valid, provided, the buyer should not have obtained the consent of the seller at gunpoint. The consent of seller is free, we are presuming. Then, friends, the agreement is valid. So consideration need not be adequate. Insufficiency of the consideration is immaterial. But an agreement which is made without consideration is void. So it is a general rule of law, friends, that every agreement must be supported by consideration. If there is no consideration, then there is no contract. But this rule is not applicable always. There are certain exceptional cases. 10 to 11 cases are there where we do find that there is no consideration, but still agreement which is made in the absence of consideration is valid. It is enforceable. See, agreements made on account of natural love and affection. Section 25, subsection 1. Then compensation for past voluntary services. Okay, section 25, subsection 2. Promise to pay time-barred debt. Then completed gift, contract of agency, remission by the promisee of the performance of the promise, contribution to charity. And then, of course, you must have studied 2-3 more points. Contract of guarantee, okay, is one of them. And contract of guarantee, then consideration is not required in case of accommodation bills. under the Negotiable Instrument Act 1881. Okay, even when surety gives guarantee of debtor, then there's no consideration, but surety wants to help the debtor. See, debtor is in dire need of money. He goes to creditor. He says that you lend me 10,000 rupees. Creditor says, no, I will not lend you 10,000 rupees because I do not know you. Then debtor requests his friends to stand as a guarantor for him. And his friends, helps him, and he, becomes his guarantor. He says to creditor, you lend him money, 10,000 rupees for a month period. I will, see to it that you are paid. And now, friends, surety is not going to get any benefit. But still, friends, he will be, he will stand as a guarantor for the debtor. Primary liability is that of debtor. If debtor commits default, then the liability of surety will arise. So, friends, there are a number of cases. Number of case laws must have been taught by the teachers to you regarding this. Regarding this agreements made on account of natural love and affection, like Venkatasamy versus Rangasamy, and then Rajlakhi Dabi versus Bhutnath Mukherjee. Compensation for past voluntary services. For each point, you must have studied, friends, sub points are there, requirements are there, and those requirements must be met. Then only the agreement which is made in the absence of consideration will be valid. Then time barred debt. Debt becomes time barred debt under the Law of Limitation Act after 3 years from the date when it became due for payment. So debt becomes time barring debt. Still, the debtor has the chance to make the payment. Okay, but for this, requirements must be met. And then you must have been taught the case laws regarding contribution to charity. Kedarnath versus Mazoom Ali, and Kedarnath versus Gauri Muhammad, and Abdul Aziz versus Masoom Ali. Contribution to charity. Person gives a promise to contribute towards charity. Okay, renovation of some temple or mosque or masjid. And then on the basis of strength of that promise, some liability is incurred. Then that promiser will be liable to make the payment to the extent of liability incurred. So friends, the general rule of law is that an agreement must be supported by consideration. If there is no consideration, then there is no contract. And then of course, friends, you must have studied competency of parties to contract. Every person is not competent to contract. Okay, parties must be competent to contract. And competency has been defined under section 11 of ICA 1872. Every minor person, every person of unsound mind, and every person who has been declared as disqualified under the law to which he is subject is not competent to contract. So friends, we can say the competent parties are every major person, every person who has a sound mind, and every person who has not been declared as disqualified under the law to which he is subject. So who will decide, friends? The person has sound mind or he doesn't have sound mind. His reports, tests will be conducted, and his medical reports will decide whether he's of sound mind or he's not of sound mind. Or judges on the basis of evidence will decide whether the person bears a sound mind or he doesn't bear the sound mind. And minor has been defined, you all know, under the Indian Majority Act 1875. Any person who is below the age of 18 years is a minor. Minor has been considered a person of immature mind. He can sue others, but he cannot be sued by others. So very important case law you must have studied regarding this, which is Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. Very, very important case law regarding this minor. And minors' laws are very, very important. Okay, so person of unsound mind, and then disqualified persons. Some of them are friends, convict person, insolvent person, or even alien friend can contract, but alien enemy cannot. Okay, trading with the alien enemy, it has been regarded as opposed to public policy. So friends, persons must be competent to contract. If they're not competent to contract, then agreement will remain agreement only. It will never take the form of valid contract. And how is minor liable? You all know minor can sue others, but minor cannot be sued by others. Rule of ratification, rule of estoppel. Estoppel, you all know, friends, that estoppel means that, the rule of estoppel is not applicable in case of minor. If minor says I'm a major, that does not make him a major. Minor will still remain minor. Restitution, you all know, friends, restitution means if any person has derived any benefit under the agreement, then it becomes his duty that he must return this benefit to the other person from whom the benefit has been derived. Because restitution is applicable in number of cases. Say a void contract, it is applicable in case of voidable contract, but it is never ever applicable in case of agreement which is void ab initio. Void ab initio means it is void from the very beginning. It is void since its inception itself. Okay, so void agreement can be void ab initio, but void contract can never be void ab initio because void contract is valid in the beginning and due to some reasons, change of law, for example, or incapacity of the person, okay, transforms the valid contract into void. And then, friends, this after this incapacity of the parties to contract, then there's a full chapter on free consent. You all know, friends, the meaning of free consent. Consent is said to be free when it is not caused or induced by undue influence, coercion, fraud, and misrepresentation. Section 15 to 22 of the ICA 1872 they deal with the various provisions regarding free consent. Coercion, undue influence, fraud, and misrepresentation. So consent should always be free one. It should not be affected by coercion, undue influence, fraud, or misrepresentation. And then, friends, after this, coercion, you must have studied the case laws Ranganama Anaya Kama versus Alvar Shetty, where, widow was compelled to adopt a boy. Adoption cannot be forced. If person is not willing to adopt, then adoption should not be forced. Okay, so friends, if with one's own sweet will, the person wants to adopt a child, male or female, then of course, friends, adoption will be valid. But it should not be forced. It should not be imposed by one person upon the other person. And then, friends, after beyond this free consent point, another is that legality of object and consideration. What is illegal agreement? You all know, friends. Even in my today's presentation, verbal presentation, I did talk about illegal agreement, which has been defined under Section 23. And one of the essentials of valid contract is that it should not have been declared as void under the law, or agreement should not have been immoral or opposed to public policy, which you have studied in the definition of illegal agreement. Number of agreements, friends, have been regarded as opposed to public policy. That is, they are against the interest of the public, like agreements interfering in the course of justice, maintenance and champerty, or trafficking in public offices and titles. Okay, agreements interfering, conflicting, interest and duty, marriage brokerage agreements. Okay, many points. Agreements tending to create monopolies, agreements to defraud revenue authorities. So all these agreements, friends, you must have studied that all these are against the interest of the public. Therefore, they have been regarded as opposed to public policy. So now, friends, so there is another point, second last point under the heading, essentials of valid contract. Second last point is the agreement should not have been declared as expressly void. So there's a full chapter on this, chapter number 7, which is on void agreements. So the agreement should not have been declared as void. If it has been declared as void, that agreement will never take the form or shape of valid contract. So, friends, which agreements have been regarded as opposed to public policy? Agreements in the state of marriage, section 26. Agreements in the state of trade, section is 27. Agreements in the state of legal proceedings, section 28. And agreements, the meaning of which is uncertain. Okay, then wagering agreements. So, and then agreements to where, the performance is contingent upon impossible event or agreement to do impossible acts. So all these sections, friends, section 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and then 36 and 56, all they deal with the heading agreements which have been regarded as, which have been expressly regarded as void. So you all know, friends, there are some exceptional cases. Agreements in the state of marriage are void. Everybody has the right, friends, to marry. At what age? Okay, so the person can decide to which community or to a spouse should be from which community. Nobody can put any restriction on the marriage of any person. Any agreement which is made in the state of marriage of a person other than minor is void. And you all know, friends, the marriage under the Hindu Marriage Act, the marriage age for the male is 21 years and for female is 18 years. So, friends, restrictions can be imposed on the marriage of a minor, but if person is major person, then restrictions should not be imposed. When we talk about the restrictions, they may be total or partial. A says to B, I'll pay you 1 lakh rupees, do not marry at all. Total restriction. You should not marry at all. Partial restriction. Example is, friends, that A says to B, you do not marry, up to 30 years of age. And here, friends, this is the example regarding partial restraint. So, friends, whether partial or absolute total restraint, both are not valid. An agreement restraint made in restraint of legal proceedings. So number of agreements, friends, which have been discussed under this chapter under the heading agreements expressly declared as void. And then comes, friends, performance of a contract, discharge of a contract. Performance of a contract, every person to the contract has to perform his part of obligation. And then he has the right to exercise, he has the option to exercise some rights also. There are two parties involved, one is the promisor and second is promisee. In fact, each and every person under the agreement or contract is the promisor as well as promisee. Who can demand the performance of contract? Promisee. By whom the contract must be performed? By promisor. Or if the contract is not a personal nature, then it can be performed by legal hire also, by legal representative, or by any person who has been authorized by the promisor. Okay, so friends, and then how the contract gets discharged. What is the meaning of the term discharge? Discharge means when rights and obligations under the contract, they come to an end, then the contract is said to be discharged. So friends, there are a number of modes, number of ways in which the contract gets discharged. Performance of a contract, mutual agreement, then by impossibility of performance, by lapse of time, by operation of law, and by breach of contract. So friends, by performance, performance is one of the ways in which contract can be discharged. You all know, friends, performance can be of two types. One is actual and second is attempted. So both the parties to the contract, say, for example, buyer and the seller, they have performed their respective obligation under the contract. Then the contract will be known as performed and discharged. Everything is over now. The rights and obligations of the parties will get extinguished because now the contract has been discharged by performance. And then as the contract is based upon the agreement, similarly, friends, contract can also be discharged through agreement, through mutual consent. There are a number of ways in which contract can be discharged through mutual consent or agreement. You must have studied novation, then alteration, rescission, okay, remission, and the last is waiver. Okay, so novation takes place. Novation is nothing but substitution of new contract in place of old one. Alteration is narrower term as compared to the term novation, because novation includes alteration, but alteration does not include novation. Rescission is nothing but cancellation, which means the parties have the right to cancel the contract. Say buyer and seller, they have entered into the agreement, but before it is performed, both of them meet and decide they would like to put an end to the contract. So when friends, both the parties have decided to put an end to the contract with their mutual consent, then nobody will have objection. The contract will come to an end with their mutual consent. Or moreover, friends, you all know in case of audible contract. Audible contract provides two options to the parties, aggrieved party. One is affirmation, second is cancellation. If the aggrieved party decides to cancel the contract, okay, then in that case, the contract will come to an end. But in such a case, the principle of restitution will apply. And I hope you all understand the meaning of principle of restitution. Must have learned or studied, come across many times in many chapters. Okay, and then friends, waiver is what? To waive, to give up. The party has a right to exercise his right, but the party abandons his right. Remission is nothing but acceptance of lesser performance than what is due under the contract. So remission is also one of the ways in which the contract will come to an end. Okay, and then friends, it is not necessary that both the parties will definitely perform their part of obligation. They may commit breach also. Breach, what is breach? Breach is non-fulfillment of the promise which is made by the parties. Seller may commit breach of contract, buyer may commit breach of contract. Friends, wherever there is a remedy, there is a right, there is a remedy also. So which remedies are available to the aggrieved party in case of breach of contract? The 5 points. First is suit for damages. Suit for rescission is the second point. Then third remedy is friends, suit upon quantum merit. Then suit for specific performance of contract. And the last remedy which is available to the injured party is, suit for injunction. Damages. You all know, friends, damages are allowed by way of monetary compensation. Why are they allowed? Because, the person has suffered some loss in terms of money. Prices are not constant over a period. Generally, the prices go up. There is hike in prices we find. Some cases are there where we find there is a fall in prices also. Because during COVID-19, you all know, I have observed in some cases the prices have gone down. So friends, monetary compensation. Damages are allowed by way of monetary compensation. And then friends, damages may be ordinary or general. And then, specific damages or special damages. Okay. Then vindictive damages and nominal damages. Vindictive damages are always allowed by way of punishment. They are allowed in two cases. One is in a breach of a contract to marry, and second is in case of dishonor of a check. Where there is no justification for dishonoring the check. Still, friends, the banker has dishonored the check. There is a penal provision for the banker. So vindictive damages, when we talk about, they're also known as exemplary damages. Okay, they're also known as punitive damages. They're always allowed by way of punishment. Nominal damages. As the name implies, nominal damages are negligible. That is, person has not suffered much loss. Okay, there's no monetary loss or very less monetary loss to the aggrieved party. But aggrieved party wants to drag the guilty party into the court of law. Okay, so then nominal damages are permitted. There are certain cases where nominal damages are permitted. So, friends, what will happen? When the person has buyer has not paid the price to the seller, then seller should also pay him in the same coin. Seller should not deliver the goods to the buyer. Okay, this is a right of rescission. If one person has not performed his part of obligation, then other person should also not perform his part of obligation. So both will sit quietly. Person is not going to take any action against the other person in the court of law. Okay, so if the person wants to take action against the other person, say buyer has paid the price, but he has not been delivered the goods by the seller, then he wants to drag the seller into the court of law. He will have to apply for rescission. He wants to cancel the contract. Then the order has to be granted by the court to the agreed party that he can cancel the contract now. Friends, suit for rescission is always followed by suit for damages. The person has not applied for rescission. That person is not entitled to claim damages from the guilty party. And sometimes, friends, what happens that a person has not been able to perform his part of obligation. The contract has not been performed in full. Does it mean, friends, the person who has partially performed his part of obligation is entitled to get the partial amount, pro rata payment, or proportionate payment? Okay, so friends, you must have heard about pro rata allotment. But here I am talking about proportionate payment, pro rata payment. Whatever work has been performed by the promisor, the person must be paid on the basis of that. Quantum merit means as much as earned, as much as merited. That is, payment must be made in relation to the work done. If 3/4 work has been completed, then 75% of the payment should be made. Okay, but person is entitled to sue on the basis of quantum merit. There are certain cases. 6-7 cases are there where one can sue on the basis of quantum merit. And very important is, the contract must be divisible then. If the parties have decided that contract is entire, that is, they had made it very clear that payment will be made when the contract is performed, in totality, then proportionate payment, will not be allowed to that person who has not completed the work because contract was entire. So one can sue on the basis of quantum merit. The main important condition is the contract must be divisible. Then comes, friends, another remedy, which is specific performance of a contract. Now, there are certain cases where specific performance will not be guaranteed by the court. Now, the question arises, what is the meaning of specific performance of the contract? Specific performance of the contract means carrying out the actual obligation of the contract. Say, friends, A has entered into the contract regarding selling of painting, original painting worth rupees 20,000 to B person. B has given his consent, so we are presuming there is an agreement between the two. And now, A on 8th of July, the date of contract is 1st of July. On 8th, and the date of performance of contract is 10th of July. But on 8th of July, A informs B that he is not going to sell him the original painting. He is not going to deliver him the original painting on 8th of July. And now, friends, this is a case of anticipatory breach. You all know. Okay. And now B has got two options. He can treat this anticipatory breach as actual. He can put an end to the contract. He can go to the market and try for that same painting. If the same painting is available now at, say, 11,000 rupees and the agreed price was 10,000 rupees, then 1,000 damages he can recover from the seller. But what will happen, friends, if painting is not available in the market? It is a rare painting. It is not at all available in the market. Now, buyer cannot get from anywhere. and that seller was the only person. Okay, then buyer can apply to the court for specific performance of contract. So then the court will give the order to the seller that as per the order of the court, specifically that seller has to carry out his obligation. So, this is the meaning of specific performance of a contract, or carrying out the actual obligations of contract. But friends, this order will not be guaranteed by the court in some cases. There are some exceptional cases that this order will not be guaranteed by the court. Say, for example, for one of the cases is when person is a minor person. Okay, or it is not possible for the court to supervise the execution of the contract. Then also, or the contract is for personal services, teaching, or singing, dancing. All these are the examples of contracts which are of personal nature. So here, friends, this remedy cannot be exercised, which is specific performance of a contract. Even if the person may apply, but the other person, the court is not going to give this order. So just now, friends, I have told you that wherever the contract is for personal services, there this remedy cannot be exercised. Which remedy? That remedy is specific performance of a contract. Then there comes the last remedy, which is suit up for injunction. The meaning of the term injunction is prohibitory order. Prohibitory order will be given by the court to that person. Say X person has decided to perform his singing performance. He has decided to give a singing performance at Vice Theatre on particular day at a particular time. And then what he does, he enters into a contract with Z also to give his performance on the same day at the same time. You all know, friends, it's not possible. Now, X can be at one place only. He cannot be at two places. So then, friends, X has the right. He can go to the court and get prohibitory order against. Y can get prohibitory order against X, whereby the X will not be allowed to give his performance at Z's theatre. Okay, which means, friends, as per the order of the court, injunction order of the court, that X has to give his performance at Y's theatre. So there's important case law also regarding this, which is Lumley versus Wagoner. You must have studied this case law also. So, friends, these are the 10 chapters which you must have been learned. You must have learned. Your teachers must have covered these 10 chapters under the ICA 1872. Yes, I would like to ask the organizers if you want me to cover briefly the 3 special contracts, then I can cover. So I want your.
Ma'am, I think we can leave it to the students and they can ask questions in the topic covered by you. So,
Okay, friends.
if you have any
Now
doubt.
the meet is open for questions. If anybody has any question, and then you can ask.
Students, you can ask your doubts and anything you want to ask. Please just feel free. First year students.
Yes, friends, feel free to ask any question from the topics which I have covered in my verbal presentation. Yes, friends.
Any student, please feel free. Students, please ask your questions. I think Tisha, you can.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yeah, ma'am, I guess there are no questions since ma'am explained really well. So thank you so much, ma'am, for this much needed webinar. And we are really so grateful to you that you found time out of your busy schedule for us. And it's been a great honor to have you today with us. And I can say it for sure that the first year students have no more doubts left. Once again, thank you so much, ma'am. Also, thank you so much, Shalu ma'am and Jitendra sir, for organizing such a wonderful webinar. We are looking forward to more amazing webinar on various topics. So yeah, thank you so much, Ishma ma'am.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, ma'am. For it's been really nice at such a short notice. You took out time for my students, and they are really benefited. I'm damn sure about it. So nicely and thoroughly, you have given the basics, and in such a easy way, we are able to get the overview of Indian Contract Act. Thanks a lot, ma'am, for sparing time out of your busy schedule. Thank you, students, for your patient learning, and in future also we'll be calling various experts for you. Thank you, ma'am. From Acharya Narendra College, on behalf of Commerce Department, I thank you once again. Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Okay, friends. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, at last I would say that without a good audience, an event cannot become successful. So thank you so much everyone for joining us today. We hope that you found this webinar useful. You can leave now. In future, we'll be coming up with more amazing webinars. Thank you.